So this project starts off like every other project that uses solid wood, and that is with rough lumber. That's how I buy it. The edges are not straight, the surfaces are very rough, and the material itself has to be planed and jointed before I actually have a usable board. And I do that because you get the material for cheaper, and I also get to control the thickness of the boards and where I get to pick the best part of the board from. But don't worry, I'm not going to bore you guys with long, boring prep. No, that's not going to be the case here in today's video. Today, I'm just going to snap my fingers and voila, instant board prep. There you have it. I wish I could do that every project. That'd be so great. Not having to go through the process of, prepping all the wood. And then here's another process which I really don't enjoy. I hate gluing. It's a little background there for you guys. Here I'm gluing up the individual slats for the different layers in the block. And I get really nervous whenever I have to glue up boards because I feel like I'm always constantly under pressure, to hurry before the glue sets up. And so I hardly ever show it on camera, but I figured I'd show you guys, in this one, just to get an idea of how the individual slats are made for the 6 levels that make up the block. And here I just have them in a clamp, and when they come out of the clamps, they're a little uneven on the surface. As you can see here, one's a little higher than the other. So this 16.5-inch board is too wide to fit in my 15-inch planer. So we'll take it over to the CNC router and we'll surface it there. This is like the best way to get a flat surface on both sides. And I have to do this to all 6 of the boards, both sides, to ensure that they're perfectly flat, and when I lay them on top of each other and glue them to each other, there's no voids or gaps or anything like that. It really is critical. It's very important to getting a nice tight seam in between each of the boards. So here it is. It came out of the machine, and I have them just dry stacked on top of each other. And what I'm doing here is I'm prepping 4 dowels that I'm going to use in each corner of the block. And the dowels are a little bit tight for the 1/4-inch hole that they're going to be going into. So I sand them a little bit to make them fit a little looser, as you can see here in the hole. It'll make the assembly a lot easier later on when I'm gluing them up. So now I'm just using a 1/4-inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill all the way down, just shy of the bottom. I leave about a 1/2 inch from the bottom, and I'm using a square there to keep myself vertical so that I don't go in at an angle. And this walnut was particularly, it was pretty hard, but it worked out pretty good. And you'll see here the dowel fits nicely right into the hole, and that will keep the individual layers from sliding around. When I go to glue them up, they'll stay in place. Here I am now liberally applying the glue to each of the individual layers. Again, stress levels up because guess what? I'm gluing. I don't like gluing. And since this is the first layer, it's going to be out there for a while. I put extra glue in it just to make sure that it had a longer open time. And this is what I use to press it together. It's a 20-ton or a 40,000-pound press. And I made a special plate on the bottom to hold all of the pieces. It's a 16-inch plate, 1/2 inch thick. And there's also a top one that goes, and you'll see that in about a minute. And I don't use clamps to hold it together because the clamps only get the pressure around the outside of the piece and it leaves the center unclamped. So this uniformly presses on the entire piece, and you get a really nice tight seam, pressure going around the entire block. So now I'm going to insert the dowels into every corner. Again, really important to keep each of those layers from sliding around when I apply the pressure on it from the press. It's got a real nice fit there with the dowels. So now I will grab the top plate, and this top plate that I made is the same as the bottom. It's made out of 1/2 inch thick steel plate. It's also 16 inches, and it's reinforced on the top with 1 inch square stock ribs that just give it extra rigidity when I'm applying all that pressure on it. I spent hours getting it really flat, because after I welded it on there, it had warped a little bit, but I had ended up getting it nice and flat. And here I'm cranking down on it, applying a lot of pressure to it. As you can see, the glue is squirting out on the seams, and that's really important, seeing that you got even pressure throughout the entire block. And I will leave this in this press for 2 to 3 hours, checking on it. Here it is out of the press now. And the sides of it are a little uneven, just as they are, and it's oversized. So right now I'm gonna take it over to the joiner, and I'm gonna get 2 sides of it nice and flush and at a 90 degree to each other, so that I can then take it over to the table saw after this and size it to the correct size. It's in its rough form, it's 16.5 inches, and I need to get it down to 16 inches for the bowl. And the reason that it's so important to get it perfectly square is so that later on when I set it on the router, I have a 90 degree corner from which I reference it from. It's really important to locate it that way. So here I am on the table saw, and I'm using one of those just prepped sides to get it through the table saw and get it down to 16 inches. Unfortunately, the blade only goes up to about 3 1/8 of an inch. This block is 5 3/4 inches tall, so I have to flip it over and do it in 2 passes. Alright, so now we're on the CNC router. I've got it located, and I use double stick tape to hold it down. And this is the 1/2 inch 4-flute roughing bit that will now start to carve out the center of the bowl on its roughing pass. And I'll let you in on a little something here. The roughing pass is quite chaotic. And what I mean by that is I can't use dust collection whenever I'm carving the bowl, because the dust boot will not fit inside the bowl. So I have to leave the router bit wide open. And the roughing bit throws chips everywhere in the shop, quite violently, let's put it that way. And I got a little nervous, and so for this video, I shot the sequences you see here with 3 cameras. And the reason I did that is because one of my cameras is really expensive, and with the amount of dust that gets thrown around in the shop, I get really nervous as to, it getting coated in dust. So you'll see me switch on and off, and like I said, there's a reason for that. I literally have to keep chasing the bit to control the dust as it's getting thrown around in the shop. And this roughing pass on the inside of the bowl took about an hour and a half just to get the roughing pass completed. It's quite a long process. The entire bowl takes about 6 hours to carve. So it's quite a long time. You can see here, it's starting to get, you know, down into the bowl. And on certain cameras, you will notice a wavy pattern that's caused by the roughing bit and the fact that one of my cameras doesn't have a filter on it to get rid of moire. That's what it's called. So I apologize for it, but I can't get rid of it. The only way to get rid of it is to blur the image, and that kind of defeats the purpose of what I'm trying to show you guys. So I'm just gonna have to bear with it. But I'm getting down now to the bottom of the bowl, and yeah, it's taking shape. You can see the diamond pattern in it already. It's pretty cool. It's really down in there and getting pretty close to the sides of the bowl. I was pretty nervous as it was getting this close. I had my finger frequently on the pause button because you know, after what happened on the last bowl where the machine lifted up and carved into the lip, I'm forever nervous. So here we are now. I started the finishing pass on the inside of the bowl, and I'm just using a 1/4 inch ball end mill to do the finishing pass. This one is a 3 flute bit, I believe. Yes. And it's less chaotic, much less chaotic than the roughing pass. This one's much easier. I can just follow it with the vacuum, and it's not quite as unsettling. I'm not running around chasing, you know, the bit, trying to keep up with it. You can really see the detail coming through now as the bit gets down towards the bottom. I used a little slow motion here just to get a little better detail of just how close I get to the the side of the bowl there. And you can see a little better the cut. There's a little lip up at the top, but that gets cut off later on when I surface the top of the block, so that will disappear. And you'll see here I'm really getting down there now to the bottom, and that spindle is really getting down inside the bowl. I was still nervous. I know that in the software, you know, it tells me whether or not there's going to be a collision, and everything was all clear, but you know, again, when you see the machine get that close to an edge after it took 2 hours to carve it and 4 hours to make the block, yeah, you get a little nervous. So here it is after the finishing process. Just giving you guys a quick look at how it turned out on the inside of the bowl. And it looked pretty good. There were some lines from different grain. It causes a little like a line on the surface, but it's easily sanded out later on after the bowl is taken out of the machine. It's really not anything drastic. And now I've flipped the bowl over and I've started the outside of the bowl, and we're back to that roughing bit. In the slow motion here, you can really see the chips flying. It, like I said, it throws out a lot of material. And the whole time that this is being carved, I am following that bit with the dust collection, you know, just chasing it. Otherwise, my shop will be an absolute mess. And I hate dust. I don't like it. So for me, yeah, I have to just keep following it for 6 hours. Trust me, I'm feeling it afterwards. My arms are killing me and my back. And you can start to see the pattern again unfolding as we get close to halfway on the outside of the block. Here's another slow motion shot showing that roughing bit really carving out that material. Getting down to the bottom. Every time that bit crosses over the top, I get nervous. I'm just waiting for it to accidentally gouge into the bottom of the bowl. But luckily, nothing happened. And on this roughing pass on the outside, I get down to, I leave almost a quarter of an inch at the bottom. And that is my holding material. That is what I use to keep the block on my sacrificial board that's on my table, and then we will cut through that with the finishing pass, which is coming up. But again, still chasing that bit, and you can see the dust piled up in the back there. And now I've begun the finishing pass here on the outside of the bowl. And this finishing pass on the outside of the bowl took 2 hours just to do that pass. The roughing pass was also 2 hours. Again, it's a much larger area than the inside, so it took longer to do that roughing pass. And I speed things up a little bit in the post-process there. I usually get this going at about 220 inches per minute. You know, it depends what part of it, but I do speed it up to try to get it maximized. And again, it still takes about 2 hours. And at this point, the spindle is not only going around, but it's also going up and down. So there's a lot of movement going on there, and that's what makes it slower. Here's just a slow motion close-up shot. Again, just a little more detail as to how it cuts and a better look at it. Unfortunately, it was with the camera that, again, doesn't have that filter. So again, I apologize for the waves in it, but there's nothing I could do. And I'm looking into other bits that will make the process faster. I haven't finished experimenting yet to get that process, the time shaved down, but I am working on that to try to cut, I don't know, maybe 2 hours off if I can. I know it's a lot, but I'm really trying to do that. As you can see here, I'm really getting close to the bottom now, which would be the upper lip of the bowl, and this is where I will begin to, as you see here, separate the bowl from the block itself. And the bowl is, so I put double stick tape on the lip of the bowl and also on the block that's remaining there, so that once I separate the two, they won't move and I won't have to worry about colliding with the bowl or it jumping around or something like that. And again, like I said, I surfaced the top of the bowl, but I did that off camera. And here it is, out of the machine, and all of the finishing passes done. really can get a great look at the diamond pattern in it. It's really pretty cool. So now I have to sand the entire outside of the bowl, and I have to sand each facet, each diamond facet, with this 3-inch random orbit sander. And I have to be very careful. I have to sand each one the same way. If I sand one more than the other, the diamond points won't line up with each other and it will look off. So you have to be very careful when I'm sanding this. And it honestly didn't take that long. It cuts pretty quickly. I was using a 220 grit paper here, so it wasn't as bad as it looked, but there are a lot of facets. Now here I'm using a nylon brush that's impregnated with resin to sand the inside of the bowl. And this is an 80 grit nylon brush. And it's a little weird. So the 80 grit actually sands like a 220 grit. I don't know why. It sands much smoother than it actually is rated. And I tried it with other higher grit ones and they don't cut for anything. They just really polish it like a mirror. And, it's not good for getting out the lines. So now I am going to apply my stamp to it. I love this part. It's pretty cool. I really like watching this every time I do it. I dampen the surface first with water, and then I use the stamp on it. I shake it around so it comes out even. That's so cool. I like that. All right, so now the moment we've all been waiting for, applying the finish. I don't know about you guys, but this is like the best part of any project for me, is getting to see the grain pop out. You spend all of those hours, tediously doing all of that labor just for this moment to see what it's actually going to come out like. And I love to see when the grain pops out. And this particular batch of wood that I had gotten, it had some really cool grain to it. A lot of the boards had like a reflective quality to it, where when you spin it around, as you'll see later on, it's just really reflective, and they change color, which is pretty cool. And the entire block is made out of walnut. You may see different colors in it, but that's just different boards of walnut. There's no other species of wood in this project. And what I'm using here is a mineral oil that has beeswax in it. And this is a food grade oil. It's made for cutting boards, for salad bowls. It's there's nothing toxic in it. And it's really cool. So what I do is I first apply the first coat liberally with the rag, and I get all the areas soaked in. I try to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I'll let that sit for a half an hour, maybe an hour sometimes. And then I'll apply a second coat. And that second coat, I will rub it with my hand to force the oil and waxes into the grain if there's any dry areas, to make sure that I get an even kind of coat on it. And then I'll let that second coat sit also for about an hour. And then I'll come back, wipe off any of the excess that's still on the surface. And if there's any other areas, I'll touch them up again, and then I'll buff it with a dry rag. And that's it. I'll just let it dry. So here it is, the finished product. And once I rotate it here, you can see the real how it shimmers when I rotate it, the diamond facets and that reflective grain. You'll see it almost turns like a light color and then it goes to dark. It was really cool, like a really cool wood that I happened to be able to get for this project. But I really love how the facets pop out like that when you rotate it. It's so cool to look at. I was really pleased with how this one came out. And so that's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next one.